Hey, this is Chris. So I made a new friend recently, and his music just got picked up to be used in a movie trailer. And he's going to tell us all about it and the circumstances involved right here on Audio Discovery. Hey, what's up? This is Chris from Audio Discovery. Today we're talking to Sigurd, who is a producer from Denmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have a YouTube channel, and I heard your stuff on Reddit, or I saw your post on Reddit, and you basically were just sharing a composition that you had done, and which was fascinating, by the way. It was a composition that you were able to, and I'm not sure exactly how it works if you like sell the license to the to Marvel, but essentially it was like a trailer for the Eternals.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so yeah, they so it got picked up, it got used, and you know and you're using Apple Logic, and yeah, and it's really great to see sort of your process. And I wanted to first of all like meet you and just have a conversation about process and all that kind of stuff. So Sigurd, good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too, man.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask was, when you were creating that, did you have a intention of it being trailer music for something like a Marvel, or like what was the idea? Did you know that you were going to be composing for that, or was that something that you started just sort of because you were just creating?
Well, trailer music is it's a weird thing. Maybe just to give context how trailer music actually works in the big industry. Then if let's say Marvel is doing a campaign with different trailers for this movie, then Marvel sends out a brief for kind of what they want to all these different editing houses, which mainly are scattered around in Los Angeles. And there's a lot of those, like a lot of these editing houses.
Right.
All these editing houses then reach out to all these music publishers, and there's even more of them with another brief, essentially saying we want this music and that music, and with these kind of hooks, and and the publishers then either take some of the tracks that composers have already done for their library and pitch them to the editing house, or they do what is called basically a custom. So they choose some of the best composers that would fit the brief, and they say, hey, Marvel is doing this and that, and we need this and that kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the whole thing is that you have to go through the whole chain before you actually get a placement and the music is used. So my music has to go through a publisher, which then has to go through the right editing house that actually wins this. Oh, my phone is going off. And then actually have to win this pitch to Marvel. So it's actually kind of a miracle every time you get your music used. So that's kind of the basic food chain of trailer music. So going back to your actual question, if I had this in mind, well, I would say every guy or girl that is working with trailer music has kind of an idea, or let's say a dream or hope to end up in a Marvel trailer.
Right.
But that track could just as much have been used for a Netflix trailer or something for Amazon. It's really depends on the editor and who is working and who likes the music, basically.
Right. Wow. So the fact
it's pure luck.
yeah. So the fact, yeah, exactly. So the notice went out, right?
Yeah.
And then so you had the intention of like saying, okay, here are the features that they need, that they've asked for. And then so you just start putting everything together, and then
No, that's the fun thing about this one, because also many times when these trailers are done, these publishers, for example, this publisher, which is called Score, they have already a big catalog of maybe 20, 30,000 tracks already composed and ready. It's like just a big library, playground of music, right? And then they pitch some of this music when they get briefs. And this was one of the tracks that I composed a year ago. It's just been sitting in the library for I don't know how long, and get lucky through the chain and boom, hit it.
Okay, right on. That's man, what awesome fortune. Like
that should have bought a lottery ticket,
right. Yeah, no, I don't think that the lottery ticket would have worked, because I think your luck got used for the thing.
Probably.
But it sounds great. I mean, it is really impressive sounding track, because a lot of the sounds have to be, like you're pulling sounds that are completely unnatural, right? Like there's something that can't happen in nature, so tell me about like some of your favorite some of like the favorite things that you had to go through in order to sort of get some of the sounds that you were able to achieve.
Oh, well, that's a whole mess. Well, one of my main things is that my favorite music to do when it comes down to, well, both trailers, but also if I work on a video game or anything else cinematic without vocals and all that stuff, then my big main thing is horror. So I have a almost unhealthy passion of gathering sounds that is not supposed to be musical.
Right. Yes.
So I can tell that I work when I spend a whole day going around just recording my apartment.
Okay.
Weird parts, doors creaking, and you can time stretch a door creaking into the abyss and make it a weird drone. And
that's awesome.
So that's basically my main workflow, is just to gather as many sounds as I can, and then try to make them sound like something else.
Right.
Basically.
Right. No, that's cool. What are some tools that you use in order to do that?
Oh, well, if I can't get the sound source near my computer anywhere, then I just use, mostly I use my trusty Zoom recorder, or else I actually use my phone. I use my phone a lot lately because the phone has this weird way to compress the sound, of course, because it's made to talking to. It's not made for sound recording, right?
Right.
So I read about it somewhere. I can't remember it exactly, but most phones today have a weird kind of like combination of noise gate and compression to get all the noise around you out, but keep your voice very nice and clear.
Right.
So that actually works great for when you do especially sound effects and weird noises.
Like if I'm noodling around on guitar and I'm not in a vicinity of of my DAW and I'm not able to plug in, the phone is a great utility. And so there'll be like some ideas that I'm sitting down, I come up with like a riff or something like that, then I'll like, and I'll start to record it. And the recording, it's like, oh man, this is actually like, sounds pretty cool. Like it sounds, it doesn't sound bad. It's just, it doesn't sound traditional. right? Like
Exactly.
sound like we are used to that. So that's like a really cool. So then when you go in and you have your recording, right? So let's take the door creak for instance, and you're opening the door. You got it from the Zoom recorder, and then you put it into your DAW. What are you doing with it in order to sort of time stretch or process? Like, what kind of processing are you doing?
Well, the first part of the process is to start out, I record everything out to one big file on the Zoom recorder. So I don't stop and start it all the time. I just let it run, and I just record a lot of weird stuff.
Okay.
So it's one big file in Logic, and then I basically go through the file, kind of analyzing the sounds, what they would work for, and what kind of sounds they could be, and what they wouldn't work for. My phone is going crazy again.
You're fine.
So basically, very low frequency, notes or sounds, I will try to make them so either into very percussive sounds or something that can be time stretched into a big drone.
Mm-hmm.
And the more high pitch and upper mid sounds will go into a folder where they have almost a tonal note to them, so I actually can make them fit into the track somewhere. Right. I don't know if you have watched any trailers lately, but almost every trailer nowadays starts out with this big low boom sound.
Yep.
Yeah, boom, right? So yeah, and that can easily be a knock on the door. Just pitch it down and put a compressor on it and a whole ton of reverb, and you got that sound.
Nice.
So I basically I start out with arranging them into what they could become.
Okay. Basically. Right. And then, so how's your file management process?
Oh, it's bad. I tried telling myself so many times, oh, you should organize it into organic percussive stuff and low synth rumble stuff and blah, blah. And I just have one folder that says, this might work. Awesome. But that's also a part of the creative process, because then I don't have this mindset of going into a folder full of low sounds when I try to make a low sound. Mm-hmm. So that forces me to go through them all sometimes. And sometimes even a high-pitched sound can make a very cool and different kind of boom. Okay. For example.
Right. So you're not locked into any, so it doesn't have to be something that starts with any intention. It can just be completely reformed, and it'll, the reforming process will give it a new, like a different flavor than if you were to have something that was traditionally like a low frequency thing.
Yeah. Every time I end up not finishing a track is when I sit down at my workstation with a clear idea of a track. That's when nothing happens. Right. Or if I actually complete the track, it's an absolute mess. So my workflow is just sit down without anything and just find something interesting and work off of that.
That's my favorite. I really enjoy the free kind of like free association, like composing, sitting there and playing. Yeah, because the way that some of my favorite like things that I've composed for myself, and when I mean compose, I mean it's, you know, basically I noodle, and in doing that, there's like, oh, here's a thing that just kind of came out because, you know, I was messing around. So my question for you is, in your like formulation of like ideas, like obviously you're saying that you're not really, you haven't been doing like anything specific, like with the intention of this is to go in this direction, right?
Oh yeah, I've had a couple of them the last year or so, I've had a couple. Well, kind of the whole trailer thing kind of slowed a bit down with the pandemic and all, because cinemas was closed and Netflix took over. But that, of course, also resulted in a lot more trailers for Netflix. But I had some trailer pitches, like the customs I talked about, where you get to play around with the theme and all. I didn't win them, but I had some. There was a new movie in the Saw franchise, I believe, called The Book of Saw, which was very fun. We got to play around with the original theme and different orchestral arrangements and weird stuff, but we just ended up not winning that one. But that's the game of customs, because even though you do this custom, you still have to win it, because all the other music publishers are also doing their own customs to try and win, right? And then I've had a couple recently, but I can't name the movies yet, because nobody knows they're coming yet. So sadly, but it is fun when you get a big film and you get the permission to basically play around with the original theme, and you basically just get the brief. Hey, we want kind of the main melody, but try to make it your own. So that's where you get, if it's horror, for example, and you have some sort of melody in the original theme, then why not try to hit wine glasses and put them into a sampler and distort them and play the theme with that, right? So it's all about doing what people expect, but weird.
Right. Yeah, it's like so you would essentially you're accomplishing the same goal that they have, and then so like that would be like, say for instance, they play the melody on a keyboard. You're taking that melody and you're like, okay, so how best can I I always say this thing was like, turn it on its side. Like just it's the same, it's the same fundamental, it's just expressed in a completely different way. And so you're just you're just changing the voicing. You're just yeah. And I love the art about that, because then you've got to really be it's kind of like where creativity really gets to sort of come out. You're actually saying like, yeah, I'm instead of using an instrument, I have, we have to do, let me figure out like how to make, I have a box cutter. Don't ask why I have a box cutter next to me, but, but how can I make this musical? How can I get this to, it's like, yeah, I could probably unscrew that, hit this and see if it can resonate somehow, and get that fundamental pitch. And then, exactly. That's cool. There
actually,
what?
Well, what are you saying?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I can't remember which one of these movies it was, but for one of the later Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they did exactly what you're talking about. We all know the big theme from Pirates of the Caribbean that Hans Zimmer did, right?
Right.
And if you listen to Hans Zimmer and listen with kind of, I see some guitars in the background, so I guess you like kind of rock-ish music.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So if you listen with a rock band ears to pretty much all Hans Zimmer music, he pretty much writes like a rock band. He has kind of like an intro and a verse and a big ass chorus in the last section, right? So the whole theme for Pirates of the Caribbean, whoever did that the trailer for the last movie, basically just took the whole thing, tuned some 7-string guitars even further down, and just knocked it out the park. And no one was expecting a Pirates of the Caribbean trailer with almost a gent sound. But they got it. It was great.
Yeah. The my exposure to that. So I know, like, so you're completely on board. So that's Jimi Hendrix,
Oh
the
yes.
cover to Electric Ladyland, um, and actually within that, it's the lyrics to House Burning Down, which was one of my very earliest
Ah,
like influences, and even actually that's a really good I guess there was a part in that song where like at the end of it, it's he takes the whammy bar and he makes it into like this motor, like a car or a
yeah,
motorcycle or something like that crashing in, and he does this thing, um and that the aspect of sound design using instruments has always been
yeah.
very interesting to me. Like, I love, Hendrix for that. I love Tom Morello, basically taking
Oh yeah,
anything, his guitar and his pedals and basically trying to get, any sound. So that's been a big motivation for me. And actually now that what I do, probably 90% of my time spent here at my workstation, my guitar is plugged in and I'm running it through any kind of plugin that I can find, and and sort of just like the signal processing capability now. I mean, whereas I used to
yeah.
love pedals, but now it's like you can essentially, let's run this through a shimmer reverb, and just get this really, so there's all these different things, and it can be so that's very consuming to me, but because I my I guess like the way that I communicate is best through a guitar. That's like my instrument of choice. It's really hard for me to sit down with a piano, and I mean I
Yeah.
can what's really strange, I can play drums, I can play guitar, but when it comes to piano, it's so foreign to me. Like this just feels weird.
Yeah,
It just feels
yeah,
weird.
I totally get it. I grew up on guitar too, and when I tried getting piano lessons, but it's because the whole theory how the chords works in one hand, right, and how you strum either four strings or five strings or six strings, it doesn't make sense from a guitarist point of view
Right,
when you get it on the piano. But
right.
but I have to say I like writing on piano because it's even though it's kind of the main instrument at my workstation because there's a MIDI keyboard in front of me all the time, right? So, but it's uh it's how do you say it? It's another way to figure out melodies because on guitar I can just go, oh, this scale fits with that and blah 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 blah, and
Right,
boom,
right,
boom, boom,
right.
we got a melody, right? And piano is like, yeah, I know some chords and I kind of know some scales, but what if I hit this one?
Yeah. Well, it
you
takes you
know?
out, yeah, it takes you out of your comfort zone. Cause
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know when, there's notes that I will play that I know what note I want to hear next based on, there's two things. One is my internal sort of, this is what I kind of would expect would happen.
Yeah,
The other thing is uh, my coordinative memory, right?
yeah,
So like if you're used to doing this like scale or this kind of thing, whatever, then yeah, you're always like, I know that this pattern feels right, so that pattern will always happen.
yeah, yeah. And
And
and that can be kind of a crutch
yeah, no,
when writing.
I definitely have a crutch for sure, that I'm trying to sort of learn my way out of it. Like I'm trying to sort of like
Yeah.
adopt new different styles, and doing deep dives on some of my favorite players that are unconventional.
I grew up on Led Zeppelin and Guns N' Roses and Pink Floyd and stuff. So
Yeah,
it was great.
nice.
I actually remember that it's one of the clearest memories I have, even from things during today. But my clearest memory is being 6 years old and looking inside the window of a music store with a guitar. And I was just like, I want that.
That's
I don't know how to play it. I don't know what it is, but it looked cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember my my dad sat me down at one of the music stores in near our area, and I had been listening to Hendrix, I'd been listening to Zeppelin, I've been listening to Beatles, you know, so a lot of like guitar based music.
Yeah.
And sat me down and put a Strat, a black Strat, and they plugged it into an amp. So my dad had a nylon string classical guitar, and so that was like, oh, you know, can you make that sound like Jimi Hendrix? And he's like, no.
No.
You know, so anyway, so we go to this music store, and he sits me down, and they plug the guitar in, and they put distortion on it, and my eyes just went like,
Yeah.
That's it, that's the sound, gimme, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So since then, you know, I like songs with clean tone guitar, but there's something about being in the presence of an amp and having that amp just pushed all the frequencies and the power, and you're just listening to it going like,
yeah. And that's the exact thing, because you know the whole discussion of, you know, real amps versus chem blah blah, let's don't go into that, but but you know, yeah, they are really nailing the sound with digital amps, and they're really getting dangerously close now, but nothing beats a roaring tube amp when you are in front of it.
Oh, well,
it's night and day, and day.
So completely agree with you, and I'm 100% on board with amp sims. I play, so these are great, right? I play amp simulations 99.9% of the time that I'm in this, because I'm here. I'm in an apartment, right? So I remember I have so beyond the Marshalls, there's a combo amp back there, and that combo amp has, it's a 40 watt single 12-inch speaker on it, and I had just gotten a bass, and I was just trying to make sure that it worked. I threw the distortion up, but I kept the volume down. But they heard me on the first floor still.
Oh, it's dangerous, man. I also have small amps and way too big amps for an apartment. But even I have this, I can't even show it because it's in another room. But you know, Orange does this. They do the tiny terror, then they do the micro terror, kind of like this lunchbox thing with I don't even think it's a 112 speaker. It must be smaller. But even though if you crank the gain on that and just push the volume just a hair up, it actually sounds decent, like a distorted guitar, but there's still a small tube in it, so it just goes from 0 to way too loud.
right. Yeah, no, those are the Orange amplifiers are very they're very efficient. You're getting a lot of sound out of a little bit of circuitry, and so the idea that like I said, like the amp sims, that is, you know, they're because when you said like, you know, even if you were to record a amp, you know, that's blaring, you know, 9 times out of 10, you know, the capsule that's taking all of that information in is yay small. Right? So
it's from a 57, right? So
so realistically, you're still gonna have to, there's still gonna have to be some translation, because, you know, you're taking things that are happening across strings that are attached to a piece of wood, a block of wood, going through the internal circuitry of a pickup, and then the circuitry on the guitar going into the amp, getting amplified, that going through a speaker cabinet, and then that gets picked up by this little microphone. You know, it's like when you're in the presence of a roaring amp and it's just sounding phenomenal. There's
Yeah.
like you said, there's nothing like it. I have so that's a 1969 SVT,
Oh yeah.
Ampeg SVT, with a on top of a an 8x10. So that thing, like when that thing is dialed in and you got, you know, and your bass is just dialed in and everything is good. I mean, it's just it's gorgeous. Like you're just like,
It's
oh,
it's the bass sound, right?
yeah,
You know, it's
yeah,
got everything. Yeah.
yeah. I had to buy because I've used active pickup basses. So when I first started playing, you know, I was into music that required active pickup basses. And then but I had, you know, because of that setup, I had to get a P bass because
Yeah, of course.
it just sounds, yeah, that's it. It
Yeah.
just sounds good.
Just like a Marshall and a Les Paul, right? You're just gonna have it.
Gotta have it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So so tell me about like so you composed for, or you had you composed for the library essentially, right? You were just
Yeah,
kind of putting stuff
exactly.
in the library. And then you also have composed for video games.
Yeah, I started out in video games when, well, my whole story is that, of course, I grew up in my teens and played in bands and stopped playing in bands and played in more bands, you know, the usual stuff.
Right.
And I still do play in some bands. And when there's not a pandemic happen, we actually tour around Europe sometimes.
Cool.
But I had to find a way to make a living with music,
Yes.
you know, and I did what everyone should do. I Google searched how to make money with music, and somewhere on that list was video games, and I had a big passion for video games.
Right.
Well, playing them, you know.
Yes.
So I figured, why the hell not try that?
Right.
And slowly, as I got into that, I got on a few smaller indie projects and kind of grew myself a little and networked around. And then one of the composers I worked on, we were two guys on the game.
Mm-hmm.
He told me about, well, basically, why don't I also write music for these libraries that deliver for TV and trailers, and some of them even also deliver for video games, right? So that was basically just me thinking, yeah, why the hell not? So I started writing, and I sent out the music to these publishers and got, well, basically they told me it's good, not good enough, try again later.
Okay.
So, you know, just kept on doing that, and eventually got good enough with the production skills to get into trailers and TV work. But video games has always been, you know, kind of, it's the big passion, you know.
Right.
Trailers is fun, and TV music is also fun, but video game music is really fun.
Nice. Are you having to do the sound effects for the video games as well, or is it just the?
I have done some, but it kind of comes down to having to choose if I want to do the sound effects or the music, because the workload is just way too big doing both. So I normally get down to doing music, because that's what I find. Well, right. sound design and sound effects is fun too, but it's the music that got me interested into
right.
doing video game music. So
right.
I basically go that route.
Yeah, and then so when you're that whole rejection process, right?
Oh
because
yeah.
that will derail.
That will make you crash and burn so fast.
Right. How do you, okay, so my yeah, I think one of my problems is, and I think a lot of people have the same issue, is we don't want to get rejected.
Yeah,
You know,
it's basic human
yeah,
instinct, right? You don't want to get rejected. So
right. And so, what did you do to sort of get past that rejection process? Like, what was your like kind of thought process?
well, firstly, I have to say, just by nature, I'm a very stubborn person, and that helps a bit.
Very cool.
but it has been this dying desire within me somewhere, not to sound like mega dramatic or anything, but
No, make
since
dude. I mean, come on, you gotta entice the
yeah,
people. So
yeah,
make it dramatic. It's fine.
yeah. So since I saw the first live video with Guns N' Roses way back when I was very small. Um, yeah, exactly. Um, it's just been a dying desire to. I want to do that, not exactly make a living of being on stage, even though I also love to do that. But I was like, that makes noise. That's what I want to do. I
Right,
just want to make noise from
right,
it. So
right.
as I told before, how I slowly got into video games and music for these libraries and stuff. It was that inner child, just saying, "Oh, you don't like this music? Well, I guess you'll like the next one I send." And to
Love it.
some publishers, I sent hundreds of tracks
Love
getting
it.
denied,
Love it.
hundreds and hundreds of tracks. And but the thing about these publishers and libraries is that they of course want new composers, because new composers is just a bigger chance of something unique and
Right,
starting a new musical trend.
right.
So what they do is that they tell you basically it's not good enough, but they also tell you why it's not good enough.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think that's the big thing, is that if you get told what's not good enough and how to fix it, it's
Yeah,
much easier to get back up on the horse and try again.
yeah.
Where if you just get told no, that's not good enough, go away, then
That's a good.
you wouldn't hold up for a long time.
That's a good point. There's an immediate reaction that you can tell, like if somebody's into it or not, and
Yeah,
that's it's beautiful. That's the whole purpose of composition or that collaboration. And so that's one of the things that was really hard for me to deal with writing outside of that collaboration, because I needed that feedback, that sort of emotive feedback of like when I'm playing something. And he is not an expressive person, like, and not that's very much an understatement. He's
oh,
just,
well, hard
like,
to bounce riffs around then.
however, no, but it's great because there is such a high standard of like
Yeah,
you gotta come to the table with something really great,
yeah,
because otherwise it's not really gonna arrest his attention at all. So
yeah,
that's something that I've really gotten, I've kind of needed. It's really hard for me to. It's hard for, like, I can noodle and I can riff, and I have a riff graveyard. Like there's just hundreds, if not, you know,
oh, I know the
multiple hundreds
struggle, I
of,
know it.
it's just come up with a thing, and then you listen to it and it's good enough to record, and then you walk away, and then 20 minutes later you come in and you just lost all context.
Yep,
And
it's gone.
what I've done recently to sort of, so that I don't, is I start to sort of, instead of just leaving the song like in its, because typically if I'm jamming, I have a basic idea of the other pieces around me. So
Yeah,
I'm playing, I'm thinking about what the bass is doing, I'm thinking about what the drums are doing. So those things, and I try to track those. So if I have an idea that's pretty, you know, that's pretty well thought out, it's like I've kind of gone through the noodle and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. And I start to kind of compose. Then I start to actually, like, I'll lay down, or I'll like program in like a beat, and I'll lay
yeah,
down some bass or whatever, just so that that part doesn't go away. Cause then it
oh
starts to
yeah,
like sound like, oh, okay, this sounds like an idea.
yeah. and it's you said you also played drums, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I, funny enough, I also play drums.
All right.
And actually ended up mostly playing drums in the bands because you can feed pigs with guitarists, but you can't find a drummer anywhere.
I love it.
Right? So, so I basically became a drummer somehow, and 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 the good thing about playing multiple instruments is that you can just instantly hear if a riff is going to work or not, because you can also hear the drums somehow. And that's actually why sometimes some of my old bandmates, they hated me a lot, because I listened to the riff once and said it doesn't work. And they just looked at me
Right.
with hating eyes, and going, why can't we just try it? Well, I'm telling you, it's not going to work.
Right.
And that's just bad, man.
Yeah. I've had, I am very opinionated, and I've learned to dial that back. And so, so I'll sit
That's a struggle of mine.
Yeah. I'll sit behind with the sticks, and I'll just, it was actually a really good sort of lesson in discipline. So we'd get into the jam session, and the guy's sitting there, and he's like and my impulse is to interact right away, just like start just coming up with a thing. And actually at some point the idea was just like, okay, so hold your sticks, arms on the snare, and just let him get through the idea, hear it, and then go, all right, so what was it that you wanted me to do with that? Particularly if there's like somebody who has, and one of the guys that I jam with, like he is opinionated. When he writes, he has the ideas of what everything should happen. He's already orchestrated everything in his mind. And he is so different. His instincts are so much different than mine. And so if I were to start to, sit down and play, he would immediately like, no, not like that. So that's what made me kind of do that. So now I do that for, everything. I'll listen to the idea, and then my first question is, okay, so what was your thought about where the beat is?
Yeah, because if you also think the other way, then you playing a whole different beat than what they were imagining in their heads can ruin the whole flow of writing the next riff for them. So it's a hard one, writing songs with other people, even though it's of course fun and should be easy. But sometimes when more people in a band is opinionated, then it can take a long time.
Yeah, no, that's true. Do you ever start with say for instance, okay, here's a melodic line, then now I'm going to take it and sort of build from it? Or are you kind of go from the sound design angle, and then you'll start to kind of develop melody after that?
That's a good question. I guess, well, never say never, maybe it happened once or twice, right? But I would say that I mainly start out with some kind of sound design, because I love traditional sounding instruments, everything from a big rock band sound to a big orchestra, right? But what triggers my creativity is weird sounds. So, and it doesn't have to be anything really crazy. It's just creating my own drone or bed of noise to make something upon, that can start the creative process, or a certain sound that kind of grabs the attention of the listener. So I would say sound design is what sparks the creative process mostly.
Yeah. And because your willingness to, or not willingness, I guess your wish to sort of be involved in the horror genre, because horror is very sound specific. There's something that can happen that will just sort of you hear a sound, and the hair on the
exactly,
it's just oh, what?
Yeah, and you have to remember that. Well, if we talk trailer music again, then trailer music is basically, even though of course music is art and is about having fun and yada yada yada, then trailer music is basically just glorified advertisement music.
Right.
It's basically what it is. Right?
Absolutely.
It's big and pretty advertisement music.
Yeah.
So also, if you pay attention to most intros of all trailers, they have a weird sound or a piano ping or one of those booms and stuff. And it's all about grabbing the attention because everybody just wants to click next after the 5 seconds on the YouTube ad, right? So
Right. Yeah.
it's about grabbing the attention and having people not click away from it.
Right.
So it's all about, and especially in horror, then that's where you get to really play around with weird sounds, because now you have to grab people's attention and scare the shit out of them at the same time.
Right.
So that's where the door creaking and stuff comes in. So yeah, sound design first.
And then the other part of that is that music is obviously emotive,
of course,
but sounds, I think, particularly when they get weird, there's kind of like an emotional angle with that, because it starts, you have something that's, if it's completely different, then you start to have like, oh, well, it's okay, so this is different, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. You're kind of in a vulnerable spot, right? You're like, and then and so it kind of starts the inquisitive process. And I hadn't really thought of it before when you brought it up, and now it's kind of making sense to me. It's like, you get into this thing where curiosity gets picked because you're in that zone, kind of like a comedy opening act. You ever notice that, like, a comedy opening act, there's always someone's got to like get the crowd willing to sort of, stop folding their arms. I don't know,
but still not being as good as the main act.
Right. Man, that's really true. I've actually seen, and I don't know how it was that I got to see somebody who was an opening act and then see them when they were actually like the headliner. But that's very true. Like when they were a headliner, when I didn't care for them very much when they were an opening act, and then when I saw them as a headliner, I was, man, this guy's funny.
But that was actually just like, I played in a metal band some years ago, and we got to support or basically warm up for some pretty big names, and borderline just got told that you can't play as loud as these guys.
Right.
Yeah. And that's because you take the whole wow factor and the X factor away from the main act,
I didn't know that. You've confirmed it for me.
Yep.
But that was my struggle with going to, like, seeing an opening act. I saw Tool back in 2002, I think, and Tomahawk opened for them. And Tomahawk's sound is huge.
Oh yeah.
But when they were playing, it was like mostly stage volume, and I think only Mike Patton was going through the PA, and not very much.
I remember a few years ago, we actually went and saw Guns N' Roses on the reunion tour. Okay. They did just before the pandemic, and I can't remember who the opening act was, but basically it was a huge arena, standard Guns N' Roses, right?
Right.
And it basically sounded like the opening act was playing on the gear, not mic'd up. You had to sit and listen like really closely to them.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm sure they had some sort of sound going through a PA,
right,
of some sort, but it was not the main system, that's for sure.
But and I didn't know. I mean, even the clubs in town here, which had like, so when my band was playing them, the sound guy that was there, we were like, why does this room sound terrible?
Yeah.
And then we would go watch a band that, you know, had a sound guy. I always blame the sound guy, but, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's because they're just like, well, you know, there's only like 100 people that are coming to see you play. So we're really just going to like, you know, kind of ease back. Cause if we push the system when you guys are playing, then realistically like that, it wouldn't, you know, why would we risk blowing our shit up if it's, you know, you guys versus, you know, somebody that's, you know, bringing in a, you know, packed house.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, the people can hear you, man. Like you're fine.
Yeah. But you don't have to hear it, you have to feel it.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, absolutely. Yeah, I need that.
Yeah.
I need that kick. The second. I'm sorry. The third show I ever played as a drummer was at a venue, like a pretty decent venue, and it was one that I had seen pretty much all of like my favorite bands play through there. So it was like, oh man, you know, I'm here at this spot,
having a great time. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it was. Oh, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And so we set up, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna we do a line check, kick the kick, you know, boom," and then I hit a couple of kicks, and then they turn the subs up.
Oh
boom,
yeah.
And I just like, like this is the greatest. Oh, there's nothing like it when you could just sort of command that much, you know, that much energy.
There's no feeling like sitting behind the drum kit and kicking the bass drum and feeling the whole kick in the stage just rumbling. That's the best.
Yeah.
Just moving some air. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's all we want to do is just move air.
Yeah, basically.
So, yeah, apologies. I kind of took us outside of the realm of sort of like the sound design and you know, but yeah,
that's okay.
This is great.
I'm here to nerd out. It's great.
Man, I love it. Yeah, no, for sure. And you know, we hadn't really disclosed too much within the discussion, but you know, the fact that like, you know, you're huge like Guns N' Roses and Zeppelin fan, I'm just like, yeah, dude, that's like so awesome.
Who cares about trailer stuff?
Right,
just rock music.
Let's nerd out on Guns N' Roses. Yeah. So that's because that's been a big motivating factor for what I wanted to do is go through all of the because one of the things I thought about with when I was like 7, I remember I could tell that because they hard pan the guitars, right? So in the rhythm sections, Izzy's on the left, Slash is on the right, and their rhythmic patterns, you know, they're not doubling their stuff. There's overdubs, but that's basically like the leads. Otherwise, it's one guitar, you know, bass, you know, kick, snare, blah blah blah. Those are panned. And Axel, and it sounds huge, you know. Like whereas like now, you know, you have if you don't have 6 layers of a guitar, it doesn't sound right, you know.
And they're all playing the same riff. Right. It's just it's this big wall of sound. Yeah, but why?
Right.
It makes no sense.
So what? Yeah, and so you know having. Because there's like a certain thing about having density in your productions, right? You want it to sound nice and dense, but have you ever noticed that like you could have a wall of guitar sound and then like an acoustic guitar plays a single note and that just sounds way fatter than all of like this wall of guitars.
Yep.
You know,
that's what I've always said. If you don't like your guitar sound, just wait till the bass player starts playing. Don't fiddle around with the guitar sound. Just wait for the bass to start.
Right.
And then fiddle around with the sound because the bass is the boss. It's sad to admit, but that's just how it is.
Well, as a bass player, like I'm totally fine with it. The other thing is I now every time I play or if I'm setting up a sound, I'm turning the bass knobs down. It's like it's all basically mid and you you know, and like my treble is probably anywhere between 1 to 3 o'clock.
Oh,
And it's like mostly like, and I learned that because of mixing. I learned that because when you're clashing, you know, particularly with like some of these like oversized cabs, you're
oh yeah,
so, and you know, by yourself, yeah, throw the bass up, you know, just get every
yeah,
frequency in there, and
exactly.
but once you have to make room for other instruments and other people, and then it's like, you got to dial that back.
Yeah, exactly. I've always just put, if it's a rock sound mainly, then I always just put everything at 12 o'clock and just listen
Mm-hmm.
to the whole thing, you know. And then mostly you have to turn down the bass and the treble up a bit, and you're good. But mostly 12 o'clock on everything. That tends to work for me.
Right. Yeah. You know, the other thing too is I don't know how many amps you have, but anytime that you have to sort of you're changing the character, or when you're choosing an amp, you're choosing the characteristic of that amp,
Yeah,
the characteristic of that circuitry. You're not, or you're selecting that amp, and then from there you shouldn't really need too much more.
oh,
Like, you know,
exactly.
yeah.
Because a JCM 800 is gonna sound like a JCM 800 no matter if you push the treble or you pull the treble, right? If you push the treble, it's just gonna sound more, but
Right.
it still sounds like a JCM 800, right?
Exactly.
So I totally agree on that.
Yeah.
It's always the amp your sound comes out of. It's not the knobs.
Yeah. Leave the knobs alone.
Yeah, and if you really need that much more, just put a tube screamer in front of it, and everything is solved, right?
100%. Actually,
Yeah.
So when I got this guy, I was like, you know what? Like, it's got that great AC/DC, like, you know, tone. It's ballsy,
Yeah,
but there's just a little bit like of that sort of density towards the top missing.
yeah.
So all you have to do is throw in a boost, and that thing just blossoms. It's just beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. So, we're coming up on the hour, man. So,
Oh damn.
yeah, this was too short.
Oh well, I could. It probably wouldn't be healthy, but I could nerd guitar stuff for 12 hours straight. No problem.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'll have to do that again, man. Would you be willing to come back
Yeah,
to the channel?
yeah. Let's do a guitar special.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, really, dude, thanks for coming on. You know, you and I will be talking, you know,
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, for anybody who's interested, I'll throw in some links into the description below so that you can check out you know, Sigurd's stuff, and anything that you want to share or plug or whatever. We'll just offer that you know, through the links in the description, so that it's just easily you know, attainable. So thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it, and we'll be having some more discussions on guitar stuff and just in general, like,
Oh yeah.
and whatnot.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. All right, well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.